Welcome to Fluent and Chill. It's the NBA edition. As always, I don't change. I'm Anthony K of Sports Fluent, and I'm here with my main man, Jermaine J. Dub from Chilltown Hoops. How you doing, Jay?
Still in effect. We still here. What's going on, guys?
You know, I love it. We got so much to talk about. So we're going to talk about the East because the standings have changed since we talked last week. We're going to talk about the West, and there's a team that I can't believe I said this, but there's a team that's on a 10-plus game winning streak. That flew under my radar. Like, I knew they were good, but we better talk about them. We're also going to talk about, obviously, LeBron and Isaiah Stewart. We're going to put that one to bed. But I want to start with what that reminded me of. So as I saw it and I saw kind of the scuffle a little bit, I thought back to the old days. I thought back to because it was in Detroit. I thought about the Pistons. And no, I'm not talking about the Malice at the Palace. I'm not talking about that at all. No, I'm talking about the Bad Boy Pistons of the late 80s and, first couple of years of the 90s. That's kind of how they played all the time. And so I think we sometimes, listen, I know when I have these conversations with people, we sometimes over exaggerate how physical the 80s and kind of 90s were. But then sometimes we completely forget how physical it was, if that makes sense. Like, I think it's somewhere in the middle there. So when you think back to the Bad Boy Pistons, so I'm talking about, listen, some people have called another team the Bad Boy. No. There's only one Bad Boy Piston teams, and that was Dumars, Thomas, Lambier, Sally, Rick Mahorn. Yeah, those are the Bad Boy Pistons. Rodman, I can't believe I left out Rodman. When you think back to those teams, obviously, we're going to talk about the physicality of it, but what kind of is the first, if you had to take away that part of it, what else did you see in that team that made them so successful? Because you can't just be going out and bullying people and win back-to-back championships. There was more to it.
That's the major problem that we had with the Bad Boys, Tone. That's all people remember about them, is that they were just a rough and tough rumble type of group. People forget that they had a really good team, and they were really good. I mean, they weren't back-to-back champs for nothing.
Yeah.
Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars are, I think they're the only backcourt in NBA Finals history to win back-to-back Finals MVPs. So we haven't had that. We're talking about a guy in Dennis Rodman who was Defensive Player of the Year. But a lot of times, like when we see what happened with James and Isaiah Stewart, people today, they cringe. But when you're talking about a team like the Detroit Pistons back then, a lot of times, not even a lot of times, most of the time, teams exemplify what their city is. And that's who the Detroit Pistons were. They were a rough and tumble, hardworking, gritty basketball team that represented the city that way, because that's who the city of Detroit was. That's why they got behind them the way that they did. And we definitely underemphasize how rough the 90s were. I mean, a lot of times we might overemphasize it. Well, the 90s was a lot of Well, you have no idea how many fights were going on and how many how many guys were getting thrown out of the game and ejections were going on strictly because of fighting. There was no flagrant foul rules back then. So guys were getting slammed and guys were getting pushed around. And Jordan would be a prime example of that, where Michael Jordan made it clear that, okay, I can't go to the referees because they're not going to do anything. I can't go to the league because they're not going to do anything. Physically, I'm not prepared to play that way. So what's my alternative? I got two choices. I'm either going to quit or I'm going to have to get stronger, because the game's not going to change. The game is not going to change. This is what the game is. And that's what he did. He got stronger. Pippen got stronger. And then the Bulls got stronger. That was the only way that they're going to get better. But what I do think that is left out with the Detroit Pistons, who exemplified what Detroit is that they had a really good basketball team.
I was talking about, I believe it was the 89-90 team. And I posted where I said, they won this championship behind two 20-point scorers in the finals. Isaiah and Joe Dumars both averaged over, and they were like, no, they didn't. I said, go look it up.
Facts.
They did. So they had these two guards who could play defense. Like Isaiah could have a limb hanging off and he would still go out there and play, right? But they could score. Then they had, I think it's Vinnie Johnson would come. I think he was coming off the bench in those days.
The microwave.
They don't call him that's what I said. They don't call him the microwave for nothing. He heats up quick, right? And then you had guys like Rodman who would do, and Mahorn, and even John Sally who would do, and Lambier who would do the dirty work, the rebounds. Was there a loose ball that they didn't get? right? We talk about that today where we're like, we always talk about the superstars, but what do you and I always say? Those superstars, none of them, not LeBron, not KD, not Steph, not Giannis, nobody wins a chip without somebody like a PJ Tucker or a Bobby Portis or a Draymond Green diving and getting those balls. Well, they had I think they had 5 of those guys.
Absolutely.
Which made them you didn't want to. We talk about the physical. We don't talk about the mental. Just think about that. Like you said, Jordan wasn't tough. Like he went and worked out like that whole off season, right? Where he said he didn't want to touch weights because he thought it would mess up kind of the rest of his game. But then he was like, oh, actually, I kind of have to now.
I have to do this.
So you were going into a game thinking, I'm going to get beat up. That changes the way you play. If you go in knowing they're going to I'm going to get a clothesline. I'm going to get an elbow in the back. When I'm boxing out, I'm going to get punched in the face.
Absolutely.
That wasn't unheard of.
Not to mention, too, Tone, we're talking about a team in Detroit in the 88, that 89 championship team. They're arguably the best defensive team in NBA history. They were incredible. They were absolutely incredible. And when you talk about a team like Detroit, where they went 9-10 guys deep.
Yep.
Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas. That was the pretty exterior of the house, right? Okay. Then you bring in Bill Laimbeer, you bring in Rick Mahorn, you bring in Dennis Rodman. Those are the people cleaning the house because the house looks good on the outside. Who's cleaning the house? Who's taking care of the yard? Who's taking care of the kitchen? Who's doing that? That was those guys. And none of this works without any of those guys. That's why they were as good as they were. They were a phenomenal team. Now, I will tell you this, Tone, I can't say that I enjoyed watching anybody lose more than I enjoyed watching them get smoked by the Bulls in that East Finals.
Well, and that's the thing. Unless you were from Detroit, because everyone in Detroit, and I've said this before. I spent a lot of time in Detroit. A lot in Detroit, those were your guys. Those guys are like me. That's how we deal with life every day, right? But outside of Detroit, you're like, they're such bullies. They're beating people up. So when they lost and didn't take it very well, there's a lot of people going, good, serves them right.
I'll be lying to you if I
both sides. I understand both sides.
I'll be lying to you if I said, Tone, that at that 91 season in the East Finals, I felt like you being from another neighborhood and you are going to deal with somebody. I'm not even from your neighborhood, but I'm coming with you because we getting rid of these guys. I want these guys gone, and I'm coming with you to get rid of them. That's how I felt.
Outside of Detroit, again, and I'm not knocking it. I'm very happy for Detroit, and it was great for them. But it felt kind of like when Ice Cube, and I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his name, his character in this, but when Ice Cube knocks out Debo.
Craig.
Right? The whole Craig knocks out Debo, and the whole neighborhood is like, Craig.
Absolutely.
That's what it kind of was
absolutely.
like.
I'm coming with you. I'm not even from your neighborhood, Tone, but I'm coming with you because we're getting rid of these dudes. Absolutely, we are. Wear my
chain proudly now. All right. So we went from that. So that's why that kind of what happened with LeBron and Isaiah kind of sparked that memory for me of those old Bad Boy Pistons. So we talked about it on our live. I just want to kind of put a bow on it, as they say. So LeBron, here I'll give you my 30-second take, and then I'll hear yours, and then we can fast forward back to today. So the way I looked at it is Isaiah Stewart is a chippy, hard-nosed player, which I like. He kind of got up and under LeBron. LeBron swung to kind of get him off of him. I think he was actually trying to knock his arm away, but the back of his fist catches him in the head, in the face. He, of course, when people say he should have swung at him right away. Well, no, because you're not in a boxing match. You can't, you're trying to keep your cool. Anyone who's paid organized sports knows you can't just start swinging right away, all as much as you want to, right? So he kind of tries. I think he tries for a minute to keep his composure. I think, like I said, I've said this to you before. He tastes his blood. He kind of sees it. And now he kind of is like, oh my God. And the adrenaline starts pumping. And now he goes after him. And now there's nothing you can do to stop him.
Yeah.
And I think the 2 games for Stewart and the 1 game for LeBron, I think is perfect. I rarely agree with suspensions, but I think they got it right. And right after we have this conversation, I think the news cycle turns and we're not talking about it anymore. So that's my kind of overall consensus on it. What's your kind of last word on it?
Well, number one, how people cringe when they see stuff like James and Isaiah Stewart getting into a fight. Tone, how we was raised, like that was normal to see that with the Pistons getting into fights and the Philadelphia 70s. That was not
It was normal
news.
to see it in the neighborhood. We did
Right.
that all the time.
That was not news to see something like that. Now, I do think that this is going to be something that in the next 2 or 3 days, I think it's going to be forgotten, and we're gonna. But then it's going to come back, and you know why it's going to come back, Tone?
Because
the Detroit Pistons are going to be in Los Angeles next Sunday, and James and Stewart are going to be on the floor. I don't think that they're going to be chippy again. I think that this is something that's going to be squashed, but it's going to be news again.
I think that's the thing that gives it some longevity in terms of when I say longevity in today's news cycle, it might last a week. But I think two things are going to happen. One, we've already heard that LeBron has reached out trying to get Isaiah Stewart's number to tell him, hey, I didn't mean to do that. Because I honestly, people say he meant to do it. Look, I know he meant to swing. I doubt that he meant to cut. And we have to understand the NBA players, right, are a tight-knit fraternity. Is there some bad blood between some players? Sure. But for the most part, they're not trying to hurt another player or cut another player or make another. No. So I don't think he meant to do it. So the fact that he's going to call him out and talk about it. Here's part 2 of that. If there's any chippiness in the first quarter, my assumption would be that the league will have told the refs, if you see anything, you go quick on those texts and you stop it right away.
Absolutely.
So I think between LeBron reaching out and saying, kind of squashing it, and the league saying, you don't let this escalate. We can't have, anything occur. You're going to see if even one person and I guarantee you, someone's going to say, oh man, the refs are so soft. They gave him a tech for that. Yep. Because they're making sure that that it doesn't carry over from the last game. Yeah. All right. So that's what happened in the past. We're going to stay a little bit in the past, talking about last week. So last week on the show, we talked about the Washington Wizards. Really impressive. You had them at the bottom of the East. I had them kind of fighting for a playoff position.
I thought they were going to be Orlando. I did. I thought they were going to be Orlando. I had them at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Yes, I did. And
last week, they were on top of the Eastern Conference. And we both said this, and we've said it multiple times, and we say this to everyone who's like, don't live so much in the moment. Because just because someone had a good quarter, a good game, a good week, it's an 82-game season. Just, it's nice, give them their roses when they're playing well, just the way we get on them when they're playing poorly. However, now all of a sudden, only a week has gone by, and Washington still is playing better than we thought. And 11-6, they're doing well. But all of a sudden, now Brooklyn is at the top of the East. Chicago, who we knew was going to be good, is up there. Miami's up there. Milwaukee now has won, I think, 4 games, 4 or 5, 4 games in a row. I think they're in 7th and moving up the standings. You're starting to see those teams, right? You're starting to see the Nets, the Bucks, the Bulls, the Heat, the ones we thought were going to be at the top. Funny how as the season goes on, those teams are starting to move up. I'm assuming it's no surprise, but what do you think when we say, hey, we always talk the cream rising to the top?
Well, here's the thing, Tone. You got to remember that when the season starts, the teams that weren't good, they're going to surprise people early because they weren't good. They had a little longer off season because they didn't make the playoffs. So they were able to rest a little bit more, get a little bit healthier. So, of course, initially, they're going to surprise some people. However, when the season starts to when we start to get more into the season, then you start to see who these teams really are. Now, do I think that the Washington Wizards are a playoff team? They may very well can be a playoff team. However, I didn't think that they would be at the top of the Eastern Conference. No, I didn't think that they would be that good. No, I'm not buying that at all. I think I had Washington at the bottom of the Eastern Conference before the season started. And I had, like we talked about, Philly, Brooklyn, Milwaukee. I didn't have Chicago that high because, again, Tone, we're talking about the Eastern Conference right now. I believe from 3 to 11 is only separated by 3 games. Yep. From 3 to 11 is only separated by 3 games. With that being said, the better teams in the game, Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Chicago, Boston, I had them around 5. I had them around 4 or 5. They're at 6th right now. They're going to start to get healthy. They're going to start to figure it out. And as they start to figure it out, then it's going to start to basically fall into place with these teams who we didn't think that they were going to be good, and they turn out to be maybe just a little bit better than what we thought. But not nearly as good as we thought they were. So
Yeah,
again,
and you know, some of them. Listen, the good teams we know
Mhm.
there's gonna be a streak. It might be a 5, a 6,
Of
a 10
course.
game. They're gonna go on a
Yeah.
winning streak. The
Mhm.
teams that we thought weren't gonna be good, typically not. Look, some will surprise, like you said, but they're gonna go on a 5, a 6 game
Mhm.
losing streak, and that's
Yep.
gonna make a difference. Because to your point, I'll just from the 3 seed, it's actually to the 13 seed is
Not
3
9.
games.
Okay, so
Yeah,
13.
3 to
Wow.
13 is 3 games. 3 to 11 is only 2 games. It's 9
2
wins
games.
to 11, right? So it's
Mhm.
only 2 wins separating 9 to 11. So there's going to be moving, and it's going to move
Mhm.
quick, right? Like if
Yes.
you think about it, the Bucks right now are in 7th. If they win 2 games and either Miami, Washington, or Charlotte win only 1, they've now leapfrogged all of those teams and they're in 3rd. That's how quickly it can happen
In less than a week. I go from 7 to 3rd.
The 3rd in two games. If you so it's gonna there's a lot of jockeying for position. So that's why we say, hey, really like the early success of those teams. But I always say give it to like game 30, game 40, and now we can kind of see what's going on, who's who. But again, it's fun to see those guys.
Absolutely, Tone. We actually talked about this before, that I want to have this conversation that we having right now. I want to have this conversation again in January. I'd love to have
be a very different conversation.
I don't think it's going to be the same conversation when we have this in the beginning of February. I think we're going to have a different conversation because we're going to see different teams at that point. Now, they look very good right now because, again, we got teams jumping out the box. We got teams that were able to have a longer offseason and they were a little healthier. But when the season continues to unfold, we're going to see the better teams go back to the top.
So, yeah, just think about how many times mid-season, late in the season, we say, wow, whatever happened to that team? They started off so hot. And then you're like, wow, well, and I think of football. Now, don't get me wrong, they've started to come back, but just Carolina, 3-0, right? And they're like, wow, these guys are going to be great. Sam Darnold looks amazing. Oh, they're 3-3. Oh, they're trash. Oh, they're 5-5. Oh, they have a shot at the playoffs, right? Like it's just it bounces from week to week. Before we leave, we're going to leave the East and we're going to head to the West. But before we do, I just want your reaction on what I'm about to say. And you don't know I'm going to say this, so it's going to be a true blind reaction, as they like to do. There's a player who was in the West who's now in the East on Washington, and he wore a really interesting pink sweater the other day, and he's been getting a lot of social media. How do you feel about Kyle Kuzma's sweater? Did you like that? Is that something I can send you for Christmas?
I think that might be a little bit too big for me. You might have to come down a couple of sizes on that one, Tone, because you look like it basically looked like a giant curtain you cut a hole and put my head in it. That was unbelievable. I immediately thought of Fat Albert in his group. Hey. That's what that's what it looked like to me. I don't know what he was thinking, and I can appreciate guys having stylists, and I can appreciate guys having assistants.
Hey, trying things out, man. Trying things out.
And I can appreciate that, Tone, but there has to be somebody in the group that goes, nah.
Hey,
no.
just as long as he fails quick,
Right.
He takes that sweater and burns it, and is like, we're never gonna do that look again.
No,
I'm okay. I'm okay with it. See, we bring you more than basketball. We bring you basketball. We bring you fashion. We do everything for you on Fluent and Chill. All right. So next up, we're gonna jump over to the West. And look, all the talk has been about Golden State. Klay Thompson has resumed practice. He's coming back. I'm not sure the timetable. I don't know if you've heard about Wiseman, but at some point, Wiseman's going to come back. They're 15-2. They're rolling. There's another team, though, that I we've talked about the Warriors before. And listen, I know we're going to talk about them a lot as the season progresses. So I want to talk about the team that's in second in the West, because I don't know that I've ever. I guess they started 1-3. So we kind of said, hey, finals hangover. They started off slow. They played late. They played into the finals, to your point. 13 in a row later. And you said this to me yesterday when they had won 12 in a row. And I said, really? They won 12 in a row? I didn't realize. I knew they were winning a lot and they were back up. I didn't realize it was a 12-game winning streak and now a 13-game winning streak for the Phoenix Suns. Have I been underestimating how good Chris Paul is for this team?
Yes. And you're not the only one, Tone. You're in the majority, because a lot of people look at Chris Paul at age 36 years old, and he's on the other side of his prime, and he's on the other side of his career. That can he keep this thing going? They're in the top 5 in the league in pace. They got 6 guys on that team. I'm sorry, 5 guys on that team that's averaging double figures. A guy in Frank Kaminsky, who is the consummate role player who was in Charlotte, who was forgotten about. Tone, Chris Paul got him averaging 10 points a game. Okay.
He had a big game too, like a few nights ago too, right? I think like 20 or something. Like that. Yeah.
He's out of the lineup because he screwed up his knee a little bit, but it's not anything season ending. But the way that they play, it's primarily, I think they're in the top 5 in the league in assists. They're in the top 5 in the league in pace. And that's primarily due to Chris Paul. He's sharing the basketball. DeAndre Ayton and having JaVale McGee for them has become huge because he's become a consummate rim protector and a second rebounder that they didn't have.
Can I just say, we make fun of JaVale McGee so much, and like Shaqtin' a Fool used to have him on there like all the time. But man, when he goes to a team, he just quietly does what he needs to do that helps your team, like rebounding and blocks and runs up and down the court like he's super athletic. I don't think we give him enough credit for what he brings to a team.
Well, first of all, he's going to play 15 years. I want to start there.
Yeah.
So despite he's not that, and that was the rap on him, that he wasn't that smart, and he's not a guy that you can have on a championship team. He was on that Warriors championship team, and he was a consummate for what they were doing. And he's doing the same thing in Phoenix as a backup to DeAndre that he was doing in Golden State, and he's helped them tremendously. Miles Bridges is doing his thing. He's averaging almost 14 a game. Devin Booker's numbers have gone down. And when I say gone down, I don't mean they've dropped drastically, but his scoring has gone down. But because how Chris Paul
I think they're distributing,
Right. How Chris Paul has helped that team in terms of him moving the basketball and involving everybody. That works to everybody's favor. And it's not that Devin Booker is playing bad, because he's not. It's just that the ball is just moving a little bit more, and the offense is moving a little bit more fluidly than it was before. Now, I said this before, Tone. I was asked the question of who is the coach of the year. I thought it was Monty Williams last year. I think he wins it this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough not to give it to him unless the Warriors go off and like knock off like 70 wins or something, right, which they could possibly do, or 69, 70. Then Steve Kerr might get it as well, because he's done a great job with really his one star. Right, he's got his one superstar, and then everybody else, he's got them really playing their roles and buying into the system. But that being said, yeah, I think sometimes when you're a volume scorer, right, I'm talking about Booker, it's okay if the ball's being distributed a little bit more. It makes it tougher on the defenses, and you're winning games, right? Like if his numbers were down and they were losing, we're having a different conversation. Yes, the fact that his numbers are down and we're seeing Chris Paul really running that offense, right, and distributing the ball, like you said, and sharing the wealth a little bit. It's okay. I think even including Booker, I think it's okay that his numbers are down a little bit, because hey, it's what's best for the team. And sometimes that is what gets you wins. So yeah, I've been really impressed with Chris Paul. I said it last year going into the season that what I needed to see from him last year was he exceeded what I said, right? I said, I need to see him take this young team and really show us that he can lead these guys and really be that guy, not just on a bad team or on a good team. Like, I want to see it. And what did he do? He got Ayton to play better. He got Booker to play better. He got everybody to play better. They went to the finals, right? They ran into a tough, once Milwaukee figured out their defensive matchups, it was over. But they were in that series. It's not like they got blown out, right?
They were ahead 2-0.
They were ahead 2-0, yeah. So this year I said, okay, he had his run. He's now in my top 10 for point guards. He did what he had to do. High five, roll off into the sunset with this new contract, which is just a, hey, thank you for a career. Well, guess what? He's like, no, I ain't done.
I still got some more left.
Job finished? Job not finished?
Nah.
Right, I had a flashback of Kobe, like, job not done. Yeah. And so that's what I feel. It's like, no, we still have a shot at this thing. And so now that Ayton's back, right? I think they're really surprised me. So we'll see how the season goes on.
Yeah.
Other than Phoenix, right? The other guys, I think, Utah, the Clippers. Do we want to talk about the Lakers? Do we want to talk about the Lakers again?
Absolutely, though, Tone, because the Lakers they're the complete opposite of who we thought they were. But again, to your point, we just started the season. So I want to have this conversation about the Lakers in January. I want to have this conversation about them in February. Now, remember, Russ, his last 2 teams in Houston and in Washington, he starts the season slow. And eventually he starts to get acclimated to whatever team, when he was in Houston, he got acclimated to what they were doing. He got acclimated to what they were doing in Washington. And then he got going. Well, this is the same thing going on with the Lakers. Tony got 10 new guys. All right. So that's a completely different rotation that I have now. It's a completely different offense. Now, a lot of people want to talk about, we got to trade Russ. Russ is the problem. Tone, when's the last time you heard of a guy being on any team who's 19-8-8 and he's the problem?
Russ. It's always Russ. It's always Russ.
Always Russ. He's the issue. But Russ isn't the complete issue to what they got. A rebound problem. They got a rotation problem. They got a toughness problem right now. They got a slew of problems. They got a distribution problem. They got a turnover problem. They got all sorts of problems.
Did you say defense?
I didn't even get into the defense yet.
They got a defensive problem too.
They got a defensive problem, which
coaching
is
problem.
Yeah, they're at the bottom of the league in defense. We talking about a team. They got a rotation problem. That's coaching as well. So they got a slew of problems that don't include or that aren't primarily because of Russ. They got a lot of problems.
So let me ask you this, because I had this discussion the other day. So I'm gonna throw it out there to you. And I'm not saying one way or another. I'm just painting this. I'm gonna paint you a comparison. So Russ wasn't the problem in OKC. We didn't say he was the problem. He wasn't the problem in Houston. He wasn't the problem in Washington, and he's not the problem in LA. But he is the consistent on those 4 teams. Here's the comparison. We all thought Jimmy Butler was the problem in Chicago. We thought he was the problem in Minnesota. We thought he was the problem in Philadelphia. He goes to Miami and we realize, oh, he's not the problem. So the reason I bring those two together is, well, every team Russ goes to, he's not the problem, but he's the consistent. Every team Jimmy went to, they said he was the problem, but we find out later on, actually, no, he wasn't the problem. Right. Are we wrong? Is maybe Russ the problem?
No, I don't think Russ is the problem here. I think that we expect so much out of Russ. Russ plays at such a high level, and we see so much potential in him, and we see how hard he plays and how much he produces. Like when I listen to people tell me, that Russ is he's a stat patter. That stuff drives me nuts because you can't be a stat patter for 14 years. You can't be a stat patter for 13 years. That's ridiculous. This guy contributes so much to his group, but because it hasn't constituted into winning the NBA championship, and because he only plays at one speed. And I'm not a huge Russ fan, but what I am a huge fan of, I'm a huge fan of hard work. I'm a huge fan of laying it out there. And Russ is going to give you everything he has. Now, Russ isn't exactly the smartest point guard, but what he's going to do is he's going to play hard. What he's going to do is he's going to give you all his energy, and what he does, it does constitute with wins. Terry Bradshaw said it best. You can lose with me, but you can't win without me. And Russ is very much like that. Yeah. Russ is very much like that. You're going to lose with him, but it's going to be difficult to win without him.
I don't want to say he's not the smartest point guard. I want to say it's because of this is my only knock on Russ, to be honest, is that to be elite, you have to be able to play at different speeds. Because the game of basketball, and you know this, there's times when you got to run, but in the playoffs, what happens? Everyone struggles with this. The game slows down. The defense gets tighter. The shots become fewer. Everything, and it needs to slow down for you. So you can't go 100 miles an hour all the time, right? You're going to burn yourself out, or you're going to have untimely turnovers. There's things that will happen. And so if Russ, and who knows, at year 14, can he do this? But if Russ could pull it back, for a second, be like, let's slow this one down. I think he takes, if it's possible, I think he becomes a better player. Now, his stats might not be as good because the way he plays, there's a lot of possessions. And so when people say stat padding, I think it's their way of explaining something they can't understand or explain, which is he goes so fast that there's a bunch of extra possessions. And because there's extra possessions, there's going to be more rebounds and assists because you're up and down the court a lot faster. Maybe his stats drop a little bit. Like, it's 17, 5-5 or 7-7, whatever. But guess what? The turnovers are down. The decisions are better because I don't think he's not a smart point guard. I think it's just when you're going that fast, you're going to make the wrong decision more often than you would if you slow it down a little bit. So if he can get a change of pace, right? Just think about the great fastball pitchers, right? I know best. You have 101 mile an hour fastball. man, if you get a curve or a changeup, whoo, you're deadly, right?
Only
Because
except that pitcher, he keeps throwing the 100-mile-an-hour. He'll throw the 100-mile-an-hour fastball in the 9th inning. He'll throw it in the 8th inning.
yeah,
Knowing that I'm going up against a guy who will hit the fastball into the parking lot. And he's like, nah, you can't hit my fastball.
right,
Knowing
exactly. But knowing that after 9 innings, if you throw 100 mile, eventually they're going to get the timing down. So that's why I say if he gets a changeup, I can't believe I'm doing a baseball analogy, but if he gives him a changeup, they're like, oh, it's now you've thrown them completely out.
Absolutely.
So we're going to end it. I don't know if it's sad news or good news, depends on what side of the fence you're on. I was never a fan of him as a head coach. I think he was very overrated. Sacramento has moved on from Luke Walton. I think the timing might be a surprise. I don't know. They're 6-12, so I don't know what they were expecting from that team. But they've moved on from Luke Walton. What are your thoughts on him as a coach? Who I don't know if they've named a permanent replacement yet or not. I do have a name that every time there's a head coaching vacancy, I throw her name out.
Alvin Gentry is the interim right now.
Interim, yeah.
Yeah, Alvin Gentry is the interim. But Tone, I think you underestimate in Sacramento's talent. They got a good team. Yeah, you definitely underestimating their talent with Fox and with
Harrison Barnes is there again.
That's what I'm talking about. Harrison Barnes and Buddy Hield and Holmes and Halliburton and Fox. And they got a good mixture of talent. The problem that we're having, and I said this to you in the past, Tone, I think the problem was on that bench. I think the problem was Luke Walton's ability to manage this group, his ability to get this group to play better defense, his ability to get this group, especially in the meat and potatoes of games, in late games, his ability to X and O guys. I didn't think that he was doing a very good job. I thought that he had the keys to the Ferrari in Oakland when he was with Golden State, and he just didn't crash the car. That's all I think. And I don't think
I've said this before. And again, this is no disrespect for Luke Walton at all. I'm just saying, like, it would have been really hard to mess that team up. Like you had, if you knew anything about basketball, which he does, right? He's lived his life, right, from his dad to his playing days. He's lived his life playing basketball. So I'm not surprised that he didn't screw it up.
Right.
But, as with the Lakers, there's nothing I saw there. Sacramento. My thing is why maybe like you say, I underestimate the rosters. It doesn't matter. Whoever seems to go to Sacramento, it just doesn't seem to work. Even Buddy Hield, like you talked about, I think like I expect more from him. And again, maybe that is the coaching. Maybe that is, kind of those that where they're not putting him in positions to be successful. But I just find like, I don't know what happens when you go to Sacramento. I loved my time in Sacramento. I love Sacramento. I don't know why. Like, and I think back to, the Chris Webber, Jason William, Vlade Divac, Doug Christie, those guys were fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
The crowd in Arco Arena, I believe it was called at the time, was deafening. It was fantastic.
It was electric, sure. Now, I will tell you this, Tone. When I think about Alvin Gentry, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you, Tone. I'm tired of recycling these bad coaches. I'm sick of it. I think that it's time that we get some new people in here and give people, whether it's Becky Hammond.
I want to listen. I think coming up under Pop, like her basketball knowledge is like off the charts. I would really like to see her get a chance.
Absolutely.
I really would like to see
somebody like Becky Hammond, coaches like this, just some new blood. Because what we're doing is we're recycling not bad coaches, but I think that we're recycling these coaches who you get the same result, and you wondering why these teams are the same as they were, because these coaches still have the same philosophy. They haven't changed with the time, and because they are who they are, Sacramento may still be the same. So if I got a guy in Alvin Gentry who's been on the bench with Luke Walton, he's probably adopted the same philosophy that Luke Walton had. He might be a better man.
Or he's maybe whispering in Luke Walton's ear, and Luke Walton's just doing some of the stuff that he would have wanted to do anyway. That's why you have assistants. Hopefully, you listen to them. Right?
Absolutely. So when I look at this recycling these bad coaches, I'd really like to see them give younger coaches, not just younger coaches, different coaches a shot. Like Nick Nurse, for example. Nobody thought that Nick Nurse was that good. Turns out Nick Nurse is a damn good coach.
Yeah, fair enough.
Nick Nurse is a damn good coach. And I'm certain that there are plenty of Nick Nurses running around out here that if you gave them a shot, instead of recycling Mike D'Antoni and Alvin Gentry and guys like that. Mike D'Antoni is 70 years old, man. You
You
told
know,
me the difference.
it's funny. I was going to bring him up as my example, and I'm going to take the word bad out of because you would say recycling bad coaches, and I'm going to say just recycling coaches
Right.
because if you think about it, D'Antoni did the same thing in Phoenix. He tried to do it in New York, didn't have the players, mind you, but he tried to do the same thing. Then he did it in Houston, and for the regular season, it was successful because he had James Harden. Let's be honest, and it got you the same results. They won a bunch of regular season games, and that was it. Well, yeah, if that's what you want, if that's your goal, but he's not going to do anything new and fresh, right? He's not going to push the envelope. The problem is most owners, general managers, presidents of basketball operations, it's tough to have a conversation with someone who tells you stuff that you've never heard before. Like I think Nick Nurse, for example, he got his shot because he was an assistant, right? And Masai Ujiri was hearing the things in those meetings with Dwayne Casey that he was saying. And he goes, you know what? After you hear it a few times, like, and you think about it, you're like, hey, that makes sense. But I guarantee you, the first time he said, hey, I want to try this box and one, you're nuts. you're nuts. We're not doing that.
And why is he on that?
Why is he? You're not supposed to be speaking up. So, but guess what? He hears it a couple of times. He sees it. He goes, here, let me just show you. Runs it on the court a couple of, you know what? That actually might work. That might work. Right. And I think, Nick Nurse is a great example where I think people have said, most teams have like 5 defensive sets. The Raptors have 37. Like it's something ridiculous like that. Like I'm exaggerating the number, but it's like he has so many different things depending on the situation. And so, and I think to football, what happened? No one wanted to give a kid a shot. And then they give Sean McVay a shot. And they're like, oh, he's actually pretty smart.
Yeah.
Right now, it didn't get him a Super Bowl win, but it got him to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And so I think it's like, I don't want to revolutionize and just dump everybody, but yeah, I think it's okay to give these guys, take a chance, again, if they hire Alvin Gentry, it's safe, right? If they hire Mike D'Antoni, whoever it might be, those guys, it's going to be safe. You're going to get, 50 wins. You're going to be in the playoffs. You know what you're going to get. I don't know.
Maybe that's the goal, though, Tom. In fairness, maybe that's the goal, because when you talk about the beginning of the season, like how many teams, and you've actually said this before, how many teams realistically have a shot to win it?
Yeah.
How many? How many?
Half a dozen. Half a dozen is maybe.
Maybe half a dozen. So a lot of teams, it might be just getting to the playoffs is a successful season, and just maybe winning a playoff series is a successful season. My issue is if that's the idea, maybe we could get a younger coach in here. Maybe we can get a different coach in here with a different philosophy and make the playoffs and maybe advance just a little bit further and build something, as opposed to staying stagnant where we're just, all right, we win in 45, 50 games each year and we're in the playoffs in the first round and then we're out.
A team like Sacramento, the good news is, not for them, but the good news is, what's the expectation? It's pretty low. Let's be honest. The expectation is low. So if you bring in someone and you strike gold, you look like a genius. Now, if you don't, what do they say? Typical Sacramento. And you get another chance. You get a do-over, right? Look at Golden State. When they drafted Curry, got Clay, brought in Draymond, you thought they're nuts. But guess what? Remember the owner was like, oh, we're 5 years ahead of everybody else. I don't think he knew it was going to work out that. But what did they do? They're like, hey, we're not that good. We're going to take a chance. We're going to try something.
Yeah, absolutely.
It worked out okay. Until next week.
Take it light, guys. Take it.